Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Woodburn's webinars. I'm just letting participants enter now. Thank you for joining today's presentation on Asia Direct, building a direct import program via Hong Kong. I don't know what's been happening since January, but certainly the number of inquiries we've been receiving in terms of building up sourcing offices out of Hong Kong for the APAC region has significantly increased. So I thought it might be a good timing to give people information, a bit of an education on how a company can actually build up this direct import program from the APAC region directly to customers via Hong Kong. Before we start today's presentation, just a brief intro to who we are. Woodburn Accountants and Advisors is one of China and Hong Kong's most trusted business setup and corporate administration advisory firms. We are specialized in inbound investment into China and Hong Kong. What does this mean? It means that 100% of our clients are foreign investors who are looking to set up companies, subsidiaries, or alternatively set up some sort of business model in China/Hong Kong, or even in both jurisdictions. And we help with the pre-investment advisory to figure out what is the right business model for what you want to achieve in the market. We then take care of all of the administrative functions, helping to administer these companies that are, or these business models that are set up, monitor them, and then offer any additional services that might be needed. Ultimately, we relieve the pain and the pressure from doing any form of administrative work, corporate governance work associated with the subsidiaries that are set up in both of these jurisdictions. So in brief, our services range from everything from employer of record services, trademark registrations, all the way through to company establishments, and then all the ongoing administrative functions thereafter, including accounting, tax, payroll, etc. All of our clients have different objectives, needs in the market, so we always try to tailor make our solutions to ultimately what they need. It's never cookie cutter stuff. A little bit about myself. My name is Christina Kohler-Colucci. I'm the head of business advisory at Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. I have been managing our inbound investment to China division for the last 22 years. I also advise on Hong Kong because that always plays some type of role when we are talking about China. I have helped over 850 companies with their pre-investment advisory, as well as then their business model implementation, and then ultimately helping them grow and scale in the region. If you're interested in connecting with me, if you haven't done so, there is my QR code for WeChat. Please feel free to reach out. Alternatively, if you've got any questions throughout this presentation, we will have a Q&A at the end. But if you do want to have a private one-to-one discussion, just email me at christina@woodburnglobal.com. So I want to start off today's presentation with options to source in Asia, because ultimately everybody has an existing business model that they've created in terms of how to source in the APAC region. So the first option is sourcing with no local representation in the region, right? So basically with COVID, foreign companies have felt, you know what, we're not going to make that commitment to setting up a subsidiary in China and having people on the ground to supervise our sourcing operations. We're going to do all of that back home. Alternatively, not every company has the resources to immediately set up their own entity or send expatriate staff to Asia to be there full time in order to manage all of the sourcing. However, as times have progressed, things have been getting a little bit trickier, dealing with communication, time zone issues, etc. I mean, these are all the same problems that have been happening for the last 20, 30 years. A lot of companies currently, since January, are telling us that they feel they need a bit more of a presence on the ground. They don't feel the same type of loyalty. Suppliers seem to be overloaded with clients. There are issues potentially with trading agents, or they need to find trading agents. And then obviously there is the logistical and warehouse component as well that they need to be able to supervise. Now, ultimately, companies, when building up their sourcing business model in the APAC region, they will set up a network of warehousing systems or logistics providers to assist in the export of goods from the suppliers, right? They might even have IE agents, import-export agents, that just facilitate the paperwork to be able to export, because some suppliers might not have export licenses to be able to export. Sourcing in China without any local warehousing facility is naturally the first step for many that want to be able to consolidate shipments in one location. So they might have 3 suppliers, 100 suppliers. They want to find a consolidation point in terms of being able to then export from products from multiple suppliers into one container and export that globally. So ultimately, again, in these scenarios, you might then be pushed to having an entity yourself on the ground that takes ownership of those goods in order to be able to export overseas. Okay, so again, I'm focusing a lot on what the problems are at the moment and kind of what the solutions are. And just to emphasize this a bit more, I'm going to go through 2 case studies right now. So we had a client, a Spanish SME, who had a very tight budget and did not have the capital investment to establish a structure locally in the region. They had a team of procurement specialists based in Spain that basically traveled to Asia for important trade shows, meet with suppliers, negotiate purchase orders, conduct quality control tests, etc. But since COVID and since the pandemic, they have been not reacting as quickly to issues surrounding quality control tests, issues with renegotiation with suppliers and whatnot. And so they've had to pivot and figure out a scenario in which they could have experts on the ground in order to be able to facilitate these discussions. And in this scenario, this client did then set up a direct import program from Hong Kong, hiring people on the ground in Hong Kong. Eventually, after a few years, they also set up a subsidiary in China, just to have closer access to suppliers and having people on the ground that were there. In scenario 2, again, the key thing here is making sure you protect your trademark, right? Just because you are sourcing in Asia doesn't mean you aren't sourcing and having third parties manufacture products for you that won't have your brand assets on them. So make sure that you are protecting all of your brand assets when you are manufacturing in third-party jurisdictions with third-party suppliers, okay? In this scenario, there was an American company in China that, again, had over 100 suppliers, had a falling out with one of those suppliers who, in the end of the day, registered their trademark in bad faith because they canceled the contract, registered the brand assets with the China Trademark Office together with the Customs Bureau, and in the end caused delays in the exports of products from these 99 other suppliers, because obviously they owned the trademarks and it's a first to file system in China. We have a lot of scenarios where companies do not realize that although they are just manufacturing in Asia, they feel like they don't have to trademark their brand assets. This is still a requirement, whether you are purely doing that in China or whether you're doing that in multiple jurisdictions within the Asian region, right? So this is sourcing with no local representation, right? Now, again, a lot of companies use sourcing agents. This is getting less and less frequent. This really used to be in my father's day, 30, 40, 50 years ago. My father actually started Woodburn as a sourcing agency, helping European brands manufacture in China and then export overseas. eventually, all of these clients ended up wanting to have their own Hong Kong buying office and creating this direct import program. So this presentation today stems from those original clients that we did have 40, 50 years ago. So again, one of the biggest challenges that buyers have overseas is finding reliable sourcing agents, right? That are truly dedicated to you, that are reliable, that are professional, that are on time, and where you feel they aren't splitting out their time on multiple clients, right? Again, a long-term focused and consistent strategy is needed to access and profit in the market, but having an agent that has multiple clients that may not focus fully on you is not going to help you to grow and scale as might be needed, right? A lot of our clients in the past used to use manufacturers that they had built relationships with over a multiple number of years to act as their sourcing agents for other types of products that would fit within their product category, their product portfolio. In the end, this led to many of these manufacturers competing with them because basically you were giving them all the ideas on how to grow their business. So again, it's really, really important to find agents that won't become competitors, won't start manufacturing themselves similar products. It's getting trickier and trickier. And this just leads me to the point that sometimes it's better to take this control in your hands and do it yourself. Now, agents have the tendency to buy and sell the products, so they'll buy from your suppliers or the supplier network, sell to you. They might not do this buy and sell. They might just act on a commission basis, or on whether it's receiving it as a sales commission, whatever the case might be. But a first step towards a buying representation in Asia would be to identify an agent who will search for reliable suppliers on the Asian market, and who will not conflict with providing you, I don't know, brother or sister related companies, or start competing with you, etc. And this is ultimately where you always need to be careful and supervise what they are doing. So just a small case study on this. We had a French pharmaceutical company looking for sourcing agents throughout China. They had over 25 agents specific to country and product line. Some agents only had expertise for specific products, so not for the full product portfolio. And in the end, they did this because they didn't want to put all their eggs in one basket and rely just solely on one agent. Again, in order to supervise all of these sourcing agents, they had a procurement team in France specialized on the product portfolio, and they ended up traveling to Asia frequently, seeing the agents, testing products, doing the tours around the factories, etc. So again, there's this follow-up program, right? Now, I just want to highlight that eventually all these case studies that I have highlighted today went ahead to eventually set up their direct import program, ultimately by setting up a subsidiary in Hong Kong and then growing their business from them. Ultimately, why? Because they wanted to bring everything in-house in terms of expertise and also control. So let's get cracking on what the direct import program actually is using Hong Kong. All right. Now, we say Hong Kong predominantly because we service two jurisdictions, one being Hong Kong, one being China. But you can always find another jurisdiction within the APAC region that might fit this direct import program. Could be Singapore, could be somewhere else. Okay. It's up to you then to do a research study to understand what benefits would arise for you from being in that jurisdiction. Today, we're going to look at Hong Kong and what benefits Hong Kong offers in terms of the direct import program. Basic benefits that we're going to highlight is obviously strategic location within the APAC region. It is a free market economy. There is infrastructure and connectivity. It is also a financial center. There is a simple rule of law and legal system. It does have low taxation. And again, taxation will be a big component to the direct import program. If China is your main sourcing territory, then it is that gateway to mainland China. But I do want to emphasize that China should not, I mean, if you're setting up this direct import program, it should not just be for China. It really should be with that broader long-term vision that you are looking to source throughout the APAC region. A lot of people are moving their sourcing to Vietnam, India, Thailand. There's also some in Philippines, right? So it's really important to distinguish the fact that if China is your sole market, you can just do things directly with China. If the idea is to do consolidation and build this up within the APAC region, then you should have multiple jurisdictions that you're sourcing from throughout the APAC region. Okay. So what does the direct import program look like? So we have a very simple diagram here, okay? And I hope this really highlights what we mean by the direct import program. All right, so basically you have your suppliers in China and Asia. Mind you, you might also have your suppliers in Hong Kong, okay? Your customers now, instead of placing purchase orders to your UK company, your US company, basically your HQ, they are now going to place direct purchase orders to your Hong Kong company. Because again, this is the direct import program. The idea is that these customers are buying full containers worth of goods, and they want these goods to be directly shipped in order to minimize time, etc. Okay, so your customers are placing that purchase order with your new Hong Kong subsidiary. All right, your Hong Kong subsidiary is then purchasing from all your suppliers within China and the APAC region. That might even extend, mind you, to Australia, New Zealand. Okay, we do have clients that it goes that far. So it's this idea that you are switching from utilizing your HQ to utilizing now a Hong Kong company. Your suppliers are going to invoice your Hong Kong company. Your Hong Kong company is going to invoice your customers. Your customers will pay your Hong Kong company. Your Hong Kong company will pay the suppliers. In the end of the day, the shipments will be direct from whichever port you decide in the APAC region. In that shipment, you are coordinating with the logistics providers that all shipping documents are under your Hong Kong company name, okay? Again, the idea is that you don't necessarily want your customers to know who all your suppliers are, right? Otherwise, you're giving away a lot of the work and technical capabilities directly to your customers. You potentially do want to hide these suppliers from your customers. Also because maybe you've done different types of packaging, you've done some added value assembly, whatever the case might be. So you're coordinating then with that logistics provider in order to make sure that all the shipping documents have your Hong Kong company name mentioned throughout them, okay? This is basically the direct import program, okay? And we are going to talk about the benefits of this and ultimately what your goals would be by developing this program, okay? The first goal would be that you're sourcing from Asia and you're reselling either to customers in your home country or to other third-party destinations. The second, like I mentioned, is you're selling to large customers who require container loads of product and they accept direct shipments, okay? The third is that you want to centralize your sourcing function in Asia to be more closer to your supplier network, okay? In order to then be able to have better quality control and to have better control over receipts and payments that are made between the suppliers and the customers. And ultimately, the terms that you would be selling is FOB Asia terms as well. So these really are the goals that you want to achieve through the direct import program by setting up this, oh, hold on, let me go back to the slide, this business model, okay? So again, any questions you might have, please do insert them into the chat box, okay? Now, the idea of the direct import program, and by utilizing Hong Kong and ultimately by utilizing Woodburn, you have to check whether other corporate service providers would do these services for you. Some corporate service providers are so templated that they only provide administration services. This is a little bit out of the scope of most corporate service providers, and I'll explain to you why. And it's predominantly due to the trade documentation. Okay, so the direct import program, the main function is that you are centralizing all supplier correspondence, and managing all logistical aspects, payment aspects through one entity, which would be this Hong Kong company. Now, we all know that everybody's on a tight budget, right? We don't want to have high fixed costs when we're setting up this direct import program. And the idea is, and the beauty of Hong Kong is, that you don't have to have an actual operational office in Hong Kong if you don't want to. Meaning that you are reducing then the fixed costs associated with this program, okay? Ultimately, you could, if you liked, outsource all of these functions. Now, one thing that Woodburn does not offer is quality control, but we do offer a bunch of other services, allowing you to minimize then that fixed overheads. So the key features of this program is that you can sell FOB Asia or ex-warehouse. You can manage through this entity the letters of credit and trade finance. Mind you, one of the services we offer is that we can do that coordination with your bank. We can also help you handle all the trade documentation and liaise with your vendors in Asia. We can't help you address quality concerns with suppliers. This has to come from you, right? Because every client will have different product portfolios. And then obviously the quality control expertise needs to be there based on those products. So you could delegate that work and outsource that work to QC companies that are for sure out there, or you could hire in-house, which obviously would then give you higher overheads, right? And ultimately, the biggest feature of this program is the tax advantage. Now, I am only here going to offer you the tax advantage of Hong Kong. It is critical that you then check how this relates overall to your complete structure and how it would affect your tax benefits in your home jurisdiction, okay? But the advantage in Hong Kong is that if you are creating a direct import program that is offshore, meaning that you have no suppliers in Hong Kong, no customers in Hong Kong, and there's no inventory in Hong Kong, you can apply for offshore tax exemption, which basically means that if you are granted this status, you are paying 0% profits tax, okay? Alternatively, if your business is considered onshore, right, then up to the first 2 million Hong Kong dollars of net profit, you're paying 8.25% profits tax, and anything above that would then be at 16.5% profits tax. Okay. Again, any questions, please put them in. Please put them in the chat box. I will get to all the questions at the end. So how does the program actually work? Okay, well, the first step is you need to set up an entity in Hong Kong. Okay, so Woodburn can offer you the service where we set up this company. What is important when you are setting up this company, again, for tax reasons, is understanding who's going to be the shareholder, who are going to be the directors, understanding the day-to-day workflow on how the program works, and ultimately, are you going to outsource that work, hire people in-house, or have people in your HQ manage these aspects? Okay. Now, I am going into the details of how it works, just to really give people that foundational understanding of what is the back and flow work based on, again, let me go back to this, on how this works. Okay, so we're going to go into a bit of the nitty-gritty details on how that works. So if you decide to outsource all of this, this is how Woodburn would work. Again, you can replicate this somehow within your own structures, but Woodburn would receive orders in your company name directly from your retail customers. We would handle all the commercial matters. such as receipts, processing of letters of credit, invoicing, accounting, as well as the banking. And then we would help your company or the people in your HQ manage the supply chain. And what that means is, obviously, you choose a logistics provider because you're paying for their fees, but we would manage that workflow, right? That communication, that documentation flow then with them, okay? Hong Kong ultimately does provide you with that greater flexibility, right? As an Asian exporter, this new entity represents ultimately an opportunity for the importer to leverage off of its existing retail, off its existing design and purchasing networks to sell into new markets if they choose to do that, right? Now, I'm not saying that you have to change your structures overnight, okay? If you feel that with your existing customers, it would be rocking the boat to suddenly say you have a Hong Kong company and now they have to buy from this Hong Kong company, you don't have to do that. You can actually set up this Hong Kong company for any new businesses that you are developing. It will give you this flexibility to be able to then have new clients from other markets around the globe and then centralize those new clients out of the Hong Kong company. As mentioned, these new markets could be anywhere in the world. The key is that the sales from the Hong Kong company would be booked on an FOB Asian port basis, and the goods then shipped directly to these new customers. This would free up capital on inventory that would otherwise be tied up in stocks that are held in warehouses, obviously, potentially in your own jurisdiction. So benefits, as I mentioned, taxes. If you guys have any questions on that, let us know. Again, you're looking, if you're doing offshore business, at a 0% profit tax rate. Again, I just want to highlight offshore tax exemptions are not clear cut. The Hong Kong Tax Bureau Inland Revenue Department wants you to pay taxes, so they're not going to make it easy for you. They will look through all of your transactions to make sure that every single transaction is considered offshore. They will have a whole list of questions verifying the type of business that you are doing. If you don't get granted that status, then again, up to the first 2 million Hong Kong dollars of net profit, it's 8.25%. And then above that goes up to 16.5%. Again, the direct import program should be offering you flexibility. It should not be a burden on you, okay? You can choose to sell to your clients FOB Asia or X warehouse. The idea is that you are reducing the amount of inventory that you are holding. The idea is that you buy your inventory, you sell your inventory immediately. It does free up capital if you are looking then to finance other projects. One of the benefits I highlighted earlier is that Hong Kong is a great financial hub. It is certainly superior to China in many aspects. Local letters of credit, trade financing through the Hong Kong banks can be sourced and managed. Obviously, disclaimer, when you are setting up the Hong Kong company, it is certainly not easy to open up a bank account with a traditional bank. We have had some reputable companies, old school companies that are centuries old, be denied. So it is definitely not something that is easy. A lot of our clients at the moment are setting up accounts initially with, I don't know what you would call them, neobanks, digibanks, banks like Airwallex, World First, etc., to start off what they want to do. And I can tell you that the turnaround times for those processing of financial transactions is relatively quick. Again, the idea with the direct import program is to reduce budget, okay? So it is to make sure that you stick to transaction-based fees and lower the overhead costs that you would have. Obviously, if you want to bring everything in-house and have administrative people, quality control people, merchandisers all sitting in one office, that obviously increases your overhead. But this comes down to what you want to control, right? I don't say anything to people who say, no, I want to have 2 or 3 people on the ground in Hong Kong who are going to travel throughout APAC. but we're centralizing everything out of that. You might even feel that you need to expatriate the head of procurement or somebody in your procurement division over to Hong Kong in order to be able to manage all of this. And obviously then also look for new suppliers, vet those suppliers, etc. The goal with this direct import program is control. Okay, I've mentioned the word control numerous times throughout today's presentation. It's bringing that control in-house in order to be able to react and pivot swiftly and to manage your own team. There is low risk. I mean, the risk ultimately is a financial one in terms of the investment to set up the Hong Kong company and going through the burden of the bank account opening if you're going with a traditional bank. But ultimately, it is a pretty straightforward transactional entity, okay? Nowhere here have I highlighted that this is a holding company. This is a transactional trading entity that is buying and selling, okay? And ultimately, you know, our goal always is to see our clients grow. We want you to be able to budget accordingly and to grow not just in the region, but on a global scale. The idea of the direct import program is that one, it allows you to find new customers, but it also helps you to look at new product lines, expand on your product portfolio, look for new international partners, expand your supplier network, not just in China, but again, throughout the Asian region. Okay. So that's the direct import program. And I'm just going to finish off again today's presentation to remind people, especially those that I can see that the people that are on today are probably more experienced with sourcing in Asia, but those that potentially are new to sourcing in Asia, kind of the pitfalls that we see, and also the pitfalls that, you know, my father experienced when he set up the business 30, 40 years ago in terms of vetting suppliers. I, to this day, still get emails from people who have found suppliers through a variety of online platforms, one of them being Alibaba, as well as a few others. I mean, Alibaba has really stepped up its game to vet the suppliers they put on there, but you can always have a couple that sneak through. It's really important. I mean, so just to get back to that story of, I still get emails from people who have talked through these online platforms to suppliers in China, pay deposits, and then never see these people again, and then wondering how to get that money back. I'm not a lawyer. This is something that's not my expertise whatsoever. This is where you would then need a lawyer in China on the ground to support you in that lawsuit or whatever you're going to call it in terms of trying to find your money and get your money back. Okay. So there are still people who are naive, innocent, new to sourcing in Asia. Do your market research, right, for your product so you know the pricing required, get informed about mandatory testing requirements for the points of sales, and try to provide as much information as possible about the product you are looking for, such as packaging, quality, quantity, in order to be able to get the most accurate pricing from these potential suppliers. You want to avoid losing time by going back and forth. Now, after COVID, if you guys aren't doing trips to the APAC region to actually physically vet these suppliers, this is probably the biggest mistake you can do. You need to be able to go to their production sites, look at what they're producing, go to their showrooms, meet with them vis-a-vis, and discuss and negotiate. There are always companies who do not do these trips. And it is imperative for you to do this due diligence and actually legitimize these factories, okay? Some suppliers will show extremely impressive factories, office buildings, but in reality, and they'll show this on Zoom or they'll show this on photos, whatever the case might be, but in reality, they're working out of a back room and they are subcontracting from other suppliers themselves. So please make sure you are doing that physical visit. Quotations. Many suppliers that promote their services on well-known B2B websites tend to lure their customers with rock bottom pricing, okay? Or this like slightly in between rock bottom and middle level that is like enticing you to say, oh, okay, that's actually quite a nice in between. Once the order is confirmed, deposit is paid, they will suddenly increase the price and more or less force you into accepting the higher price or lose all and disappear, okay? So you need to have the ability to monitor your suppliers in Asia so that you can prevent yourself from running into these traps. Sometimes low pricing can also mean shipment delays if the supplier gives priority to more profitable orders, or ultimately just decides to put your shipment on the back burner, okay? Again, provide detailed product, packaging, and shipment info. Besides the mandatory testing that is required at your point of sale, you've got to be informed about packaging and product labeling. Carton measurements are required by some customers or even websites for easy shipping. So really make sure you're checking all of the necessary requirements. Constant monitoring helps to avoid manufacturing mistakes and delays. And if you can catch mistakes or omissions early enough, there is time to improve. Quality control before shipment is absolutely necessary to avoid claims, even when a pre-production sample has been signed off on, okay? You need to have a solid QC team in place to have the experience and the knowledge level about quality assurance and control, about engineering expertise, ultimately to avoid any technical issues that come up. And the last chapter, key considerations when sourcing in Asia. And I say Asia, you know, my expertise is really in China, but I have heard stories and cases about Vietnam, India, and other places as well. Number one, lack of control and communication. This is something that you need to be able to maintain consistently. Never turn a blind eye. You know, even complain on the small stuff, right? These small issues will escalate into bigger issues, and then you get stuck. Ethical situations. By this, what I'm referring to is if you are paying into an individual's bank account, this should be a warning sign. This is something that has happened so many times over the years. Make sure that you are signing contracts with legitimate suppliers and you are paying into company bank accounts, okay? Do that due diligence. Inexperienced staff not knowing how to do business in Asia is really key. We still have people that send out 20-something-year-olds to develop their sourcing offices in Asia who really don't have business experience, and yet they're sent across the world. This really did happen 25 years ago. I get it. I was probably one of them myself when I arrived in Shanghai at the age of 22 back in the day. But it's just to say, we don't have to do this anymore, okay? So make sure you are sending experienced people who know how to deal with various cultures and know how to negotiate, because again, there are cultural differences, right? So, you know, banks have a KYC process. I say with sourcing, have a KYS process, know your supplier in and out. Understand subcontractors. Even for logistics providers, we have had many clients work with large logistics companies in China who they themselves are subcontracting, okay? And maybe not to the specifications that you require. So if there are any cases of subcontracting, make sure you are aware of it. Be aware of your end clients, knowing your supplier network, because ultimately that is how you can lose your clients, right? So the idea of the direct import program is to make sure that everything is done under your Hong Kong company name and that they are not aware of who your end suppliers are. Government interaction may be key depending on your product portfolio. Again, not everybody needs to have government interaction. Just know that if you do need it for help reasons, they are there and they are improving. Okay. Again, number 10, abnormal, unexpected methods of payment is something to really pay attention to. Make sure your finance team is watching out for this. Ultimately, to finish off before we get to the Q&A is how can Woodburn help? Ultimately, what we do is we help you create your Asia Direct program via the Hong Kong company. We can help you then set up that Hong Kong company, administer, monitor it, and assist in creating the trade documentation around it if that is something you're looking to outsource. We do have clients who generate all the trade documentation from their HQ. It does require an additional resource, or they hire people on the ground in Hong Kong to do this work for them. I think it really comes down to understanding the quantity of transactions that will be running through the entity and whether you then need a full-time staff to manage all of that. All right. Now, I've seen questions popping through, so let's get started on them. Okay, Polly, you wrote a long one. We're experiencing an issue where we manufacture one part with one Chinese manufacturer, and then this goes to another manufacturer that incorporates it into the end product. The issue is the first manufacturer issues the finished goods into a customs quarantine warehouse. The reason given is because we are a foreign customer. Is this normal? Will using a Hong Kong sub or having a local China subsidiary bypass this issue? Paulie, ultimately, your first manufacturer needs to sell the goods to the second manufacturer. That would smoothen out the whole process, because then your second manufacturer is completing the finished product. You are only directing them to tell them that they need to bring it to them. But when you're looking at the paper flow, and as long as the goods are not leaving China, ultimately that second manufacturer should be purchasing those components or those raw materials, whatever they might be, to then incorporate that into the finished product. Alternatively, if you don't want that second manufacturer to know who that first manufacturer is, then you would need to use your own Chinese entity to buy from that first Chinese manufacturer and then sell it to the second manufacturer. And then you're avoiding them knowing who is that first manufacturer. Alternatively, but then this is just adding costs, right? I'm going from simple to a little bit more complicated to more complicated, is if you don't have a Chinese entity, you could then say, I'll use an overseas entity. And that could be, I don't know, a Hong Kong company, whatever overseas entity that purchases from the first manufacturer, who brings the goods into a bonded logistics park, and it's considered then an export, and he gets a VAT refund. And then your overseas entity sells it to the second manufacturer, but this second manufacturer then has to re-import those goods and pay customs duty, which in my opinion would be a little bit silly. Okay, then Paulie has another question. If you have your UK parent company be the face to customers, who then sends the PO to your Hong Kong company, presumably there will be VAT and customs duty between UK and Hong Kong. Hong Kong has no customs duty and no VAT. So if your customers, I wouldn't see, I mean, you can use your UK company as being the customer to Hong Kong, but that's not really one of the goals of the direct import program. The goal of the direct import program is allowing your customers to buy directly from your Hong Kong subsidiary. It's eliminating that arm between customer UK, Hong Kong to just customer to Hong Kong. However, if your business model is that you want UK to be the sole customer of Hong Kong, there is no customs duty and VAT in Hong Kong. But we're talking about export. Your arrows and your description are going into China. So I don't know if that means selling into China or if that means exporting into China. But you could be China is your supplier, sells to Hong Kong, and you then decide that you sell to only one customer, which is in the UK. Douglas, hi Christina, we're thinking of using this model to import European products to supply China and the Asian region. So this would be, okay, this is then the reverse scenario, right? So it would be Asia, it would probably be, I don't know how I would call it, Asia sales. You're basically saying you want a Hong Kong company to buy from overseas to be able to sell into the APAC region, as well as potentially China. This is not a problem. Again, you can utilize Hong Kong as your distribution point, okay? Which means that Hong Kong has all the customers within the APAC region, and Hong Kong has then that supplier network within Europe. The concepts ultimately are the same, okay? And the goal is again to buy containers to then sell containers to your customers throughout. Cost structure from Rudolph. So on webinars, because I post this on YouTube and all of that, I don't really reveal my service charges. Basically, we have a standard fee for incorporating the company. And then if you want to outsource the trade documentation, there is a cost per transaction. And Rudolph, I'll be happy to send that through to you if you like. I have everybody's emails from their registrations, so I can do that. And then you can take a look at it. Douglas, you were asking for a call. Happy to do that. I can't do this through this setup to book an appointment, but I'll send you my calendar link so you can set it up there. Not a problem. Those are all the questions that came through. Polly as well. If you've got any other questions, happy to jump on a call again to go through it with you as well. Just to, again, finish off today's presentation, I mean, I always like to remind people that when entering and operating in China, it can be truly a rewarding journey with the right preparation and the right strategies. I'm hoping that today's presentation, by looking at the direct import program and setting up this program for your sourcing operations or your sales operations, you will have the ability to be prepared for the types of transactions that will be popping up. So again, thank you all. And if you do want to have these calls, whatnot, I will send you private emails later to all those that joined today that would like that. But if you are watching this on replay, again, happy to do so. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Goodbye.